Hello everyone and welcome to SRNA's Ask the Expert podcast series. Today's podcast is entitled Helping Children and Families Manage and Cope with Stress During COVID-19. My name is Gigi DeFibri and I will be co-moderating this podcast along with Rebecca Whitney. SRNA is a nonprofit focused on support, education, and research of rare neuroimmune disorders. You can learn more about us on our website at wearesrna.org. This podcast is being recorded and will be made available on the SRNA website and for download via iTunes. During the call, if you have any additional questions, you can send a message through the chat option available with GoToWebinar. Our 2020 Ask the Expert podcast series are sponsored in part by Alexion, Genentech, and Viela Bio. Alexion is a global biopharmaceutical company focused on serving patients with severe and rare disorders through the innovation, development, and commercialization of life-transforming therapeutic products. Their goal is to deliver medical breakthroughs where none currently exist, and they are committed to ensuring that patient perspective and community engagement is always at the forefront of their work.
Founded more than 40 years ago, Genentech is a leading biotechnology company that discovers, develops, manufactures, and commercializes medicines to treat patients with serious and life-threatening medical conditions. The company, a member of the Roche Group, has headquarters in South San Francisco, California. For additional information about the company, please visit www.gene.com.
Viela Bio is dedicated to the development and commercialization of novel, life-changing medicines for patients with a wide range of autoimmune and severe inflammatory diseases. The company's approach, which targets the underlying molecular pathogenesis of a disease, is aimed at enabling the development of more precise therapies, identifying patients more likely to respond to treatment, and pursuing multiple indications for each product candidate. For additional information about Viela, please visit vielabio.com. For today's podcast, we are pleased to be joined by Dr. Lana Harder and Ana Hernandez.
Dr. Lana Harder completed her doctoral training at the University of Texas in Austin, Texas, and completed her pre-doctoral internship at the Kennedy Krieger Institute and Johns Hopkins School of Medicine in Baltimore, Maryland. She completed her postdoctoral fellowship in pediatric neuropsychology at Texas Children's Hospital and Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas. Since 2008, Dr. Harder has served as a clinical neuropsychologist at Children's Medical Center Dallas, CMCD, and as assistant professor of psychiatry and assistant professor of neurology and neurotherapeutics at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center. She is board certified in clinical neuropsychology and specializes in the neuropsychological evaluation of pediatric patients from infancy to young adults with disorders of the central nervous system. Dr. Harder serves as the neuropsychologist for the CMCD Pediatric Demyelinating Diseases Clinic. Her research interests include cognitive and psychosocial outcomes for pediatric multiple sclerosis, transverse myelitis, including acute flaccid myelitis, acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, clinically isolated syndrome, and neuromyelitis optica.
Ana Hernandez earned her master's in clinical psychology in 2003 from Barry University in Miami Shores, Florida, and became a certified brain injury specialist in 2011. She completed her internship at Children's Psychiatric Center in Miami, Florida, where she worked with children, adolescents, and families in a variety of contexts, including individual and group therapy, as well as psychological testing. She joined Children's Medical Center in 2007 as an assessment specialist in the Family Center for the Care of Brain and Nerve Injuries, a clinical research program for children with brain and nerve injuries. She presently works within neuropsychology, conducting neurobehavioral testing for research, looking at a variety of conditions that affect neuropsychological functioning and neurodevelopment, such as pediatric traumatic brain injury, extreme prematurity, low birth weight, pediatric cardiac arrest, and rare brain disorders. Welcome, and thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us. It is really special to be able to be with our SNRA community at this time, a community I've spent a lot of time with over many years. And I just, before we get started with our questions, wanted to acknowledge that we're all doing the very best we can in a truly extraordinary situation. Unfortunately, there's no textbook way to manage ourselves and our families during a pandemic. None of us were prepared for this experience. And like so many of life's stressors, this can really bring out the worst in us, but it can also bring out really amazing parts of humanity. I think we've seen that in our homes and in the community over these last few weeks. Today's podcast is hopefully going to normalize, and it's meant to normalize the wide-ranging emotions and experiences we're all enduring, but to also highlight when additional help may be needed. We also hope to leave you all with practical tips and resources, but want to remind everyone listening, as well as ourselves, that no one will do this perfectly. There simply isn't a perfect or right way to do this. We are all in this together, and sharing information, I believe, is one of the best ways we can support each other. So I want to thank everyone who have submitted questions. Thanks to those of you tuning in. And thanks again to the SRNA for coordinating this and for having us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harder. We truly appreciate those words, and definitely take them to heart. And as a parent of a child with one of these rare disorders, and just a parent in general right now, it is an unprecedented time, as we continue to keep hearing. So I really truly appreciate everything that you've said. With that, we'll go ahead and start with the questions that have come in from our community. And the first one we'll start off with is, what are some coping strategies for stress that adults are experiencing due to COVID-19? And what about coping strategies for kids?
What a great question. I'll start with this one. I think, a lot of us are spending time on how to protect ourselves through physical distancing, but I think it's also a time to think about protecting ourselves psychologically. I think it's important to remind all of us we're the gatekeepers for what comes into our homes in terms of news, for example. It can get to be a lot, right, hearing the news. And I think it's easy to have that tendency to want to be glued to the news and hear the play-by-play, but I think it's really important to monitor ourselves in response to that information, as well as our family members. So some general statements about coping that I think are good for us to be thinking about and really reviewing right now have to do with going back to basics, thinking about the things that serve to keep us well in terms of our health and also our mental health. And so these basics are as important as ever right now. And it means things like getting a full night of sleep. We always say no less than 7 hours, but for our young folks and even those with medical conditions, more than 7 hours is often indicated. This also has to do with our diet and moving our bodies. So the things we should normally do, we especially need to do now. One of the differences, though, is that we need to be a lot more intentional. We don't have our usually daily schedules to guide us. We don't have the tardy bell that's going to go off at a certain time at school, or that we're rushing to a meeting at work. So it may not be natural for us to impose structure to the day, but it is something that I think will go a long way for us right now. And I'll say a few things about that, but as we go through more questions, I think we're going to be addressing coping strategies really throughout this entire podcast. Just a few things about daily schedules. I've heard a lot of people say we set a daily schedule and we had every hour really outlined, and then quickly threw that right out the window, right? It didn't work. It was too much change too fast. And so one idea that might be a little more feasible would just be thinking of your anchors. What are your anchors in a day, right? We all have meal times. We might need to take a medication, daily hygiene like a shower, our bedtime, our wake time. Use those anchors to really guide you through a day, because otherwise it can be easy to get lost in what time it is. A lot of people are making jokes about what day it is. It's hard to remember that sometimes in this new situation that we're all in. So thinking through what those anchors might be as a starting point and using those to guide you. Again, realizing it would be hard to follow any daily schedule perfectly, but schedules are really important, especially for kids, to have some predictability to their day. And I think it's also helpful for adults as well, who are trying to continue to work and meet deadlines and take care of all of those around us. Again, we're going to talk a lot more about these ideas as we move ahead. One final thing I'll say about coping strategies is if you haven't ever before, now is a good time to tune in to the inner voice in your minds. I think most of us have this, and think about how to replace any negative thoughts or messages with positive ones. This isn't something that's going to happen overnight in an hour, an afternoon. This is something we really have to practice and be intentional about. And I point this out because just like sleep and these really basic fundamentals of staying well, our thoughts have a lot to do with how we feel and behave. And so I just want to mention that here. And again, we'll talk more as we move through our questions.
Great, thank you. I think that was a really good overview, and I think as we get through the questions, it'll be great to learn more about these different strategies. So if someone has a child at home and they're kind of unsure about how to talk to them about the issue right now, COVID-19, and what social distancing means and why it's important, how would you suggest someone talks to their child about these particular issues?
Thank you, Gigi, for the question. And this is Anna. This is such an important question and a concern on every parent's mind. So I think the important thing here is to kind of let your child's question guide you and to try to keep explanations age appropriate. Always, all the while being truthful, but not offering unnecessary details or facts. So this is especially true with very young children, early elementary school children. So for example, while you might explain that the coronavirus is making people very sick, it's not necessary to provide details about the number of deaths. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So with this age group, you can provide brief, simple information that balances COVID-19 facts with appropriate reassurances that, adults that care for them are there to help and to keep them healthy and to take care of them if they do get sick. And so we can also give simple examples of the steps people are taking every day to stop germs and stay healthy, such as washing hands. We can use language such as, adults are working hard to keep you safe. Something else to consider also with this age group is that, this age group tends to be the least vocal about, what they're thinking and what they're feeling, worries that they might have on their mind, but they're certainly very perceptive and they're noticing all the changes around them. So with this age group, it's important to schedule some playtime to really give them, the opportunity to express their thoughts and feelings through their play. And, we got to remember that children feel empowered if they can control some part of their life. So when you play, allow them, to take the lead. There's a publication that I wanted to recommend that I thought was really cool, and I found just the other day. It's called Time for Kids, and it's a really great publication for children from kinder through 6th grade. And it touches on a variety of social issues in a format that keeps reading really interesting for kids. And so discovered that they have several articles on the coronavirus by grade level. So it makes it kind of easy for parents to find, which one works best. And so the best news about this is that their digital library is free for anybody interested for the rest of the school year. We can provide these sources to you later to share with your listeners. The next group are the upper elementary and early middle school children. this group of kids often is more vocal in asking questions about their safety and what will happen if COVID-19 spreads in their area. And they may need help separating reality from rumor and fantasy. So this age group, you know, we got to think about they may already have access to electronic devices and social media. So it becomes especially important to help them tease out fact from fiction. I mean, we often have to do this for ourselves as we kind of, you know, surf the web and get on social media. At this age, it's also, you know, it's also possible to talk about how our, you know, national, state, and community leaders are working, you know, to keep them safe and to prevent germs from spreading. There's also, so then we have the upper and middle high school students. So here issues can be discussed in a little more deep, you know, give more details and more depth. You know, you can refer them to appropriate sources of COVID-19 facts. The CDC is a really good resource. And with this age group, as with all age groups, to provide honest and accurate factual information about the current status of COVID-19 and engage them in decision-making about family plans, scheduling, and helping with chores at home. There's also a downloadable book that I want to talk about for kids written by Malia Jones, who is a social epidemiologist, and it's available for free. So the title of the book is A Kid's Book About COVID-19, and it focuses on facts like hand washing, how a virus works, how germs spread, and how we can work together. And we'll provide, you know, how to get this resource too, so your listeners can access this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hernandez. That was incredibly helpful, and especially speaking with the different age groups of children. And we'll be able to share those links too when we put the podcast available for listening on our website. We'll make sure to link to these resources that you've mentioned as well. So thank you very much. Another question, and you know, including, you know, the different age groups. I know in my own household, I've had my college age child have to come home because school has been closed, and then I have my other children. My husband's not working now, and so we're all in the same house. Do you have any suggestions? Are there any ways families can adjust to quarantining in the same household when we're just not accustomed to spending so much time together? It's so much more than what we're used to.
Oh, yes. This is a big one and a really good question. And as you're saying, it's not typical or even natural to be in the same space with others for such long periods of time. I like the example you gave of a college student being home. This is a student who's been out in the world and independent and now is coming back home. And so while there can be really a lot of positives to being with family, this is a lot, and it's a lot for the different members of the family to cope with. Probably affects them in different ways. So, you know, thinking about this, this idea is how do we create some kind of quote unquote distance to allow, you know, us to get that space that we need that is healthy for us to have actually, is thinking about encouraging individualized activities, whether that is inside or outside the home. So instead of thinking that, you know, going back to the schedule example, we don't need a schedule that everybody does all the activities together, but actually there's a lot of built-in time for people to kind of have their own space and quiet time if that's possible. So designating time for individual activities, even getting outside while practicing our physical distancing, you know, maybe taking a drive if that's relevant or appropriate, can help kind of create some of this space. Maybe you get space when you're in the bathroom or taking a shower. I mean, for some people, it may come down to those moments that are brief in duration, but can really make a difference. having designated areas in the house for each person, I've heard can be really helpful. I've heard this feedback from some patients and families. So for example, a place for kids to do their schoolwork. Also want to acknowledge space limitations. So these areas may not be a constant area for the same person, but might be assigned to different people at different times. So that goes back to being creative and flexible, but really acknowledging that this isn't typical or natural for any of us. And again, being intentional about kind of creating that space, even in the same walls.
Thank you. I think those were some really great suggestions. So are there also any techniques for example, meditation that you would recommend in this situation that might be helpful with kind of dealing with stress or anxiety about everything that's going on?
Yes, I think that now more than ever, we have access to so many resources, and we are almost bombarded by all of these self-care tips, which in and of itself can be so overwhelming to kind of tease through and figure out what really works for us. But I love this question, and I wanted to really talk about breathing, which goes hand in hand with meditation. So, many of us aren't conscious of how we are breathing. And it's really important now more than ever because we are all collectively as a society experiencing so much stress and so much anxiety due to COVID-19 and everything that is happening around us. So, we've all had to reshape our lives and find new ways to navigate all these new things with, making it all work with work and relationships, obligations to our family, and then, having to take care of ourselves. And because it's so difficult to carve out that time for self-care, I wanted to focus on something simple and easy to do because we do it already. We just have to remember to do it the right way. So I want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of breathing. So there's two types of breathing patterns. There's the thoracic breathing, also called the chest breathing, and then the diaphragmatic or abdominal breathing. So when people are feeling anxious, they tend to take rapid, shallow breaths that comes directly from the chest. And so this type of breathing is called thoracic or chest breathing. When you're feeling anxious, you may not necessarily even be aware that you're breathing this way. And so a shallow breath lowers oxygen levels in the blood, which your body senses. And so breathing becomes a little faster and shallower, oxygen levels fall a little more, the heart begins to race, and the body feels a little more stressed, and it's a vicious cycle, but one that we can learn how to break. So the easiest way to determine your breathing pattern is to put one hand on your upper abdomen, like near the level of your waist, and then the other in the middle of your chest. And so as you breathe, notice which hand raises the most. If you're breathing properly, your abdomen should expand and contract with each breath, and the hand on it should rise the most. So it's really important to be aware of these differences during stressful and anxious time when we're more likely to take those shallow breaths or breathe from the chest. So Gigi and Rebecca, if it's okay, if we can take a moment to try this simple breathing exercise on air a couple times, is that okay?
Sure.
Sure.
All right, so if we can all just kind of get comfortable wherever we are. We may be sitting or standing or lying down. We can start by placing one hand on your chest and then the other on your belly. And inhale slowly and deeply through your nose. We can do that now. And then remember to keep your shoulders relaxed. You should feel your abdomen expanding and your chest should rise very little. We can exhale slowly through your mouth as you blow air out and press your lips slightly, but keep your jaw relaxed. You may hear a soft whooshing sound as you exhale. And we can do this again. We inhale slowly and deeply through your nose, and exhale slowly through your mouth. And so this is the type of, simple breathing that can really help, especially when feeling anxiety. You can repeat this breathing exercise because, this kind of breathing doesn't come natural to us. So it's something that, we have to work on, and we can start this kind of breathing by, repeating it 4 or 5 times, and then kind of slowly build up to a couple of minutes. And, this will prime you for any meditation exercise that you choose to do. There are 2 meditation apps that I really like because they're easy to use. They have short meditation exercises, and you can access many meditations and guided meditations for free. So the first one is Breathe, and it's spelled a little different. It's B-R-E-E-T-H-E, and the other is Insight Timer. I think your listeners might find these helpful. Dr. Harder, do you have anything to add here?
I think that was a great overview, and I liked the real example you gave, and just what Anna did, kind of walking you through, making you aware of your breath and the way that you're breathing, is how a lot of these meditation apps work. And so I think for a lot of people, especially starting out on this, having that guided meditation or guided breathing is really key. I will also mention for anyone who might be on Audible, which is where some people get audiobooks, they actually have some free meditation tracks available in there. So I'll add that. These can be searched on YouTube as well. So there's a lot of information freely available for folks who are wanting to try this out. And I think now more than ever, it's important to take this brief retreat from the day, even if it's for only a few moments. And we realize that just getting those few moments can be a challenge for a lot of people.
Thank you both so much. The breathing, just the reminder to do it is, I did the exercise along with you, and it does make a difference. And it's important to remember that.
Yes.
Something I forget about often, and appreciate those resources that you mentioned as well. I know I have used Insight Timer myself, so I can attest to that being helpful too. So thank you again. Continuing on with our questions, we have kind of a group of questions that came in that were relatively similar, mostly about adjusting to homeschooling with so many schools being closed and parents now having to be more of a teacher for their kids than ever before. How do they balance the stress of that? The stress on the parents as well as the kids. One had noted, I am not a teacher, but I'm having to do homeschooling with my kids and it's not going well. We butt heads, we get frustrated with one another, and it usually ends in a meltdown. Are my expectations too high? My child struggles with school already and has a 504 and IEP in place, but I'm concerned this will cause them to backslide in their education. How do I not stress about this, and where do I draw the line for us? And I think that's such a huge point, especially for our community when so many of our kids have these various plans in place to help them, access school, do all of these other things that the school is usually assisting with, and it's that burden has now shifted back onto the parent and accessing the curriculum and whatnot.
Right, Rebecca, these are such important questions and things to consider. I think that, if we had the ability to hear our listeners right now, we would hear a collective yes. How do we do that? And the truth is, as Dr. Harder referred to earlier, is that there's no recipe to follow here. There's no cookie cutter way of making things work perfectly because each family is different and unique, and we all come with our different sets of strengths and weaknesses. So, but with that in mind, there's things that we can do to help with this. And So first of all, we can begin by acknowledging that, you're not alone in this experience. Many of us have taken on new roles like that of teacher that we're not super familiar or comfortable with. And on top of that, we're having to fulfill our work responsibilities. So as Dr. Harder mentioned earlier, keeping a daily routine, just going back to basics, right? Just setting a time for you and your children to wake up in the morning and get going, taking time to eat and to sleep. It sounds basic, but even these daily events have changed for us. The second thing that might help is keeping a schedule. So at this point, many of us are in like week 3 or maybe even week 4 of distance learning, and now have a better idea of when our kids need us the most. So as a family, it might help to sit down and talk about, what schedule might work best. So for example, carving out a little time in the morning and the afternoon after your children have started to work, where you can, sit with them to answer school related questions. So this may help, reduce some of the, the interruptions that we may get throughout your work day. And then if there's 2 caregivers in the home, this responsibility might be shared. This is not always the case, but if there is, this responsibility, might be shared. So also some schools have sent out suggested schedules and times to work on certain subjects. But keep in mind that this may not work for every child. So when you sit to create a schedule, enlist their help and get their thoughts and opinions about their school day. Perhaps instead of, tackling reading in the morning, your kiddo would like to do math first, allowing them to kind of take part in creating a schedule that works best for them and for the family will give them, a better sense of control over their environment. And, this is really important given, all the uncertainty and unpredictability, that we're having to contend with. And then the next, idea I want to talk about is being flexible. Like, know that what may work one week may not necessarily work the next week, and that being rigid about schedules may only lead to, more stress and more anxiety. So as a family, you may have to think about going back to the drawing board and making some changes to, this great schedule that you created last week, but somehow is not working this week. And then something else I wanted to talk about is being kind. And I'm not talking about, being kind to others. Yes, this is important. But the kind of kindness I'm talking about is, the one where you're being kind to yourself during this time. So, when things don't work out the way that you planned, give yourself a break, be kind to yourself and, try to, think about that, we're all trying, to get things right. And there's no, perfect way to kind of deal with all of this. And then talking about kind of that second part of the question where, some parents are having to homeschool, they're feeling frustrated, they're experiencing meltdowns, and, they're having to, their children have 504s and IEPs in place, and they're finding it really frustrating to kind of implement, e-learning. So what I would say to this is when you feel things beginning to heat up, a meltdown coming in, take a step back and take a break, and try to avoid those power struggles. So I want to talk a little bit about the challenges of distance learning or e-learning. So many of us as parents now have this new role as teacher, and learning at home has brought on a whole set of new challenges, from technical challenges, learning how to use devices in a new way, learning much more about internet connection and bandwidth than we ever cared to know, learning how to navigate different platforms that schools are using to provide instruction, you know, like Google Classroom, Zoom, Loom, Seesaw, Padlet. It seems like every day, you know, there's something new that we have to learn. There's also, you know, the issue of space, finding a quiet spot for, you know, for kids to learn where, you know, it's conducive to learning. For some families, this may be simple, but for others, it's a real challenge to find a quiet space for maybe 1, 2, you know, 3 or more children living at home. And then finally playing that role of teacher, right? So it's likely that the way that we learned, for example, things like division is very different to the way they are learning division. And, you know, you can add multiplication, addition, and subtraction to that too. So, you know, many of us are scrambling to understand how they do things so that we can then, you know, turn around and help them. So, and this is especially frustrating if your kiddo has a different learning style and is used to supports at schools that he or she does not have at home, or, you know, that we as parents don't know how to give. And so those are some, you know, some of the important things to acknowledge as we take on these new roles. But I do have to say that, you know, the first thing to know about all of this is that your school district is providing education. So if they're providing educational services to the general student population, then your school has to make every effort to the greatest extent possible to provide services to students with disabilities according to their, you know, individualized education plan, or IEP, or 504 plans. So what we have to kind of remember and be flexible about is that, you know, this may look a little different in that the way that the services are delivered may not look the same. Perhaps these may be taking place virtually rather than in person to maintain, you know, the social distancing mandate. From personal experience, I can share that communication, flexibility, cooperation with your child's school is very important. And some other tips, you know, that I'd like to talk about is, you know, knowing how to reach the school's 504 or special ed coordinator or counselor, you know, discussing with them your specific difficulties and asking for what supports might be available. So, you know, for example, they might help schedule some one-to-one time with your child's teacher to answer questions or go over a, you know, particularly difficult lesson. You might also request some instructional coaching to know how to tackle learning or, you know, a particular assignment. Also, I wanted to talk about the importance of having a copy of your child's IEP. And if you don't have one, request a copy be sent to you and review it. There's a lot of important information to consider in there. And I know that you know, part of that question had to do with concerns over, you know, having a regression in their child's education or backsliding. If you have your IEP, you can kind of, you know, consider what their present level of academic achievement is and their performance. And, you know, if you have concerns about a regression in skills, to talk to your child's school team. You know, perhaps a reevaluation upon returning to school might be in order, where you can, you know, look at regression of skills and any, you know, compensatory educational services that your child might require. And, you know, those are some of the things to keep in mind that might hopefully help, you know, some of your listeners who are having to take on this additional role.
Great, thank you. And then, you know, how can parents of kids, you know, who have extra needs due to their diagnosis, you know, balance caring for that child and also caring for their other children?
So I know this is a topic we've discussed quite a bit in our community, a bit at camp, and even working with the patients and families in my clinic here in Dallas. I think more than ever, this is a significant issue to consider, right? We're all under the same roof, and any focus that's going toward a child with special needs might be especially noticed or observed right now when we're all under the same roof. And I know I've said the word intentional many times, but I think it does go back to that, to carve out, dedicate time to spend with all of the children in the home. And so, you know, this may be something that is doable each day, but maybe a more feasible expectation might be on a weekly basis. So, you know, if possible, consider doing that special activity with each child in the family, maybe that one-on-one time, and also include your child with the rare neuroimmune disorder in that, because time spent on caregiving is really different than time spent on a preferred activity or something, a special time with the parent. So kind of giving each child that individualized time. And now I'll follow that by saying this might not be possible, and that is okay. But consider then how the entire family might do something together. Whether again that's you know, daily, every few days, or maybe a weekly activity everyone can look forward to. I've heard a lot of people say we just don't have the same things to look forward to that we used to. So maybe creating this, something like a family game night on Friday night, you know, when the week is done, work assignments, school assignments are at least put on hold for a little while or finished for the week. So, and maybe considering that each child could take a turn picking that activity. So kind of using the creativity to figure out how to carve out those things. And again, realizing that each family might have certain challenges or barriers, but I'm trying to work through those to build in that positive time for the whole family.
Thank you, Dr. Harder. I really appreciate that. The next couple of questions we have are kind of go hand in hand, really about having a child who has one of the rare neuroimmune disorders and just being very concerned for their well-being, both physically and emotionally. One, if someone has an immune compromised or an actively immune suppressed child because of their disorder, they're already feeling that pressure. They already have so much on them that's so different from their peers. And how does a parent convey to their child, especially in the younger age groups, the necessity for, taking appropriate precautions, maintaining distance, when they already have so much more that they're already concerned with? And then on the, other end of that too, someone who's concerned about their child who's already being treated for depression and mood concerns because of the diagnosis that they've experienced. How do they know when that becomes worse and needs medical or counseling attention? They're just concerned for their child that they're slipping into a deeper and darker depression. Any thoughts on those?
Oh, definitely. I might actually start with the second part and then kind of go back to the first part. So I appreciate the question highlighting our young people and even our adults who might already struggle with a mental health condition. So, we're all experiencing a wide range of emotions and trying to adjust emotionally. But we're especially aware of those who already struggled before with something like depression or anxiety. There's also the situation where a stressor like the COVID-19 crisis has resulted in significant emotional distress that kind of puts us past a tipping point where we need help. We need help from someone outside the family, perhaps. So I think, this is an especially important time that we're checking in with our loved ones about how they're doing. As before, we want to monitor for significant changes in behavior, voicing concerns about death, dying, or harming oneself. It might be hard for a parent or a loved one to determine if it's time to ask for professional help, and you might need assistance with that. Maybe the person already had a mental health care team, psychologists, psychiatrists, other mental health professionals. So I want everyone to know that our mental health workers have been working diligently to create access through virtual means to our patients and families. And they're also working to break down barriers with insurance companies to make sure these services are immediately available to those who need them. Whether that's reconnecting with a provider you've worked with for a long time, or setting up a new relationship with a provider. And if any of you are wondering kind of what that looks like, and you maybe haven't had this experience even with a medical provider, this could be something that takes place over the phone or through a video conferencing application. So I would say best to stay in close contact with any mental health care providers, even medical teams, to help you reach an appropriate provider to address these very real and significant emotional difficulties, again, that may have been pre-existing or that may have emerged in the context of what we're all living through. And then thinking about conveying the gravity of the situation, especially to our young people with these rare neuroimmune conditions. I think as we've articulated earlier, it's important to kind of strike that balance between sharing the seriousness of the situation and balancing that with what your child can understand and even manage emotionally. So parents and caregivers are in the best position to know their child and know those kind of specific details about their child. The book that we've mentioned already by Malia Jones, a kid's book about COVID-19, I think does this really excellent job at providing information, but doing so in a way that kids can relate to. And so I think anytime we're trying to convey something serious or difficult, or kind of hard to wrap your mind around, finding a reference point that all of us can relate to, that kids can relate to, which is having the cold or flu. The book does that. They use that as like a hook to then explain to kids how this is different, how COVID-19 is different from that, but how, you know, just like cold and flu, we can spread from person to person. COVID-19 does that, but then, you know, on another level. And so giving those, and it's got great illustrations to kind of go with it. So starting in a place that they can really identify with and understand from their own experiences, and then carrying that forward. And I think one of the most important things we can do is empower each and every person, and especially our kids. So it's talking about the problem, but then pivoting quickly to what we can do about it. We all have a responsibility in the fight against this virus. And I think it's really key to let our kids know what they can do to play a role in this fight that we all share in the community. So being physically distant from one another, washing our hands, all the things that we're hearing from the CDC and others. So I think it's also a time to emphasize the social responsibility that goes with this to others and to ourselves to keep everybody safe. So those are some thoughts as related to those questions.
Great, thank you so much, Dr. Harder. And then we did have some questions about, you know, if there's any specific activities or games that are effective in reducing a child's anxiety. And then, you know, with all this extra screen time that kids are having, you know, through school, or also just, you know, being at home and not being able to do as much outside, you know, will this, you know, increase anxiety having all this screen time?
So I can talk about some activities or games that, you know, your listeners might help, you might find helpful. So, you know, with the very young children, not forgetting to, you know, take time to play, to do what they do best. So, and you know, and remembering that children often try to make sense of what they see and what they hear through art and creative play. So kind of making things available to them that is conducive to playing. Things like, crayons and markers, costumes, so that they can role play. This kind of play really serves an important purpose because, this is how children tell their stories. This is their language. And, we do the same thing when we discuss our experiences and stories with, a friend or family. And then for older children, you may want to encourage them to keep a journal. My 11-year-old daughter has a journal, and she's called it her pandemic journal. And so, she got to decorate it, which adds to the appeal of this activity. And then, together, so in this journal, she writes down her thoughts, sometimes daily, not always. Sometimes it's every other day, or as much as she feels that she needs to, whenever she needs to, go in there and express some of her thoughts and feelings. And sometimes it's just, she goes in there and she just writes what she did that day. But, the cool thing about this is that, later together, you can kind of take a look, maybe at the end of the week, and together identify themes in the journal and talk about them. So for example, some of the themes that, my daughter and I found in her pandemic journal were themes having to do with fear and uncertainty, feelings like frustration, longing for friends. But there was also hope and themes of love and family. And, this activity really opens up communication and lets me into her, internal world in a very, kind of different way. So those things might help your listeners.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would add to that, almost anything that creates distraction and fun. I think maybe we've all caught ourselves in a moment of distraction where we've forgotten about this whole thing, even for a second. There are so many different games. Maybe you have some that you haven't played in a while that you can pull out. I think also any games that promote movement and activity can be especially helpful right now. Just keeping in mind that emphasis on exercise and how we know that has a positive impact on mood. And we use the word exercise, but it can really just be any movement at all can be very, very positive. Going toward the question about screen time, I think we all know too much of anything is probably not good. But I think we all need to just really consider the context here. Understandably, we are all probably on screens more than normal. And that's a product of that remote working from home, remote school, and entertainment, right? We all need something to focus on and to do. I think things like Netflix are getting a lot of traffic right now. So I think it is a good time to still remain mindful about screen time, but be realistic and understand that this is a unique time that won't last forever. And then take breaks, give your eyes and your brains a break from the screens. We all do need that. To the extent that we can create some boundaries, it is a good idea. We talk about just on a regular day when there's not a pandemic, we talk about turning off screens an hour or two before bedtime. If this isn't possible, some people like to watch something before bed or use an app on their phone before bed. So maybe consider even the applications or the phone settings that are often built in that reduce the blue light as you move closer to bedtime, because this can really stimulate our brains and keep us awake. And as we said at the very beginning of this podcast about going back to basics, sleep is our friend right now. We really need our sleep just like we always do, but we don't want to compromise that because our schedules are off or we're looking at screens more. So those are some thoughts about that.
Thank you both so much. That was incredibly helpful. And we're kind of coming to the very end of our time that we have available, but we have a few more questions if we can hit on those a bit. The next two are kind of similar again, starting with the quarantine having caused the cancellation of many important, sometimes once in a lifetime family activities, graduations, sporting events, vacations. Do you have any recommendations on how we should handle our children's disappointment when it comes to missing out on those and not knowing if they will be rescheduled or be able to happen? And with everyone working from home, people becoming unemployed, children who have extra medical needs, and everyone just being home, with parents struggling to get that time away, that self-care, or just feeling incredibly overwhelmed and so much more stress than usual. If they're barely holding it together, how do they keep from breaking down? And if they do, is it okay for their kids to see them break down?
I can take that first part of the question regarding, how this quarantine has caused cancellation of many important things. So for many, the most painful part of the the coronavirus crisis is losing these important experiences, from high school sports seasons to proms to cheer competitions, theater productions. I mean, high school and college graduations. So this is really, it's a hard time, and there's so much uncertainty. We don't know what to expect. So while we're all missing out on very valuable activities and milestones, but I think giving kids room to share their feelings and listening without judgment, while validating their feelings. Some kids are worried about missing activities, that are going to help them with college applications and scholarships. Kids are understandably wondering how this will affect their futures. So again, giving them room to share how they are feeling, and acknowledging the real stress that they may be under, and validating their feelings might help. And then expressing confidence in their ability to kind of rebound, and trying to stay positive and thinking about the future are things that might help.
Mm-hmm. And I'll chime into that. I've noticed, I'm sure we've all seen examples of people reinventing special occasions. And, it's heartwarming to see how people are finding ways to connect and to celebrate milestones, even when we can't all gather together like we're used to doing. And so bringing that creativity in again, whether that's through our, technology, if it's, we've seen these kind of birthday parades where cars drive by, decorated cars, and, just really using this as a time to, it's a challenge, right? It's giving ourselves the challenge of how are we going to mark this moment? Because we're not just going to sit home and pretend it's not happening. How do we mark this moment in our own special way with these new rules we have in place? And using that challenge to really drive the creative solutions to this. And I personally have been really touched by all that I have seen people doing in this arena, and I think we can apply that to the graduations and the different things that are coming up. I know seniors and many others marking these big milestones have really been on my mind lately. But thinking about ways we can salvage this and mark this, and we're never going to forget it. I mean, we will never forget the way that we modified ourselves to celebrate these things. Picking up to some other parts of the question, I will say this. I mean, thinking about how do I keep myself in a good place to take care of others, to hold it together? Is it okay if, my kids see me break down. I mean, I think this question, the questions around finances, all of these are really excellent questions that are highlighting the multiple stressors that are kind of coming down on us right now, that are impacting so many in our community right now. I want to really emphasize something I talk about a lot, and I hope I can take this from just a in theory, this is a good thing to do, to really practical ways to do this. And you've all heard maybe the phrase caring for the caregiver. We may have overused this example, but on an airplane, it's why we are told to put our mask on before helping others who need help from us. I know that it's a hard time to think about caring for ourselves when we are in a caregiving role. But even if it's taking those few minutes, like we mentioned before, if that's in the shower or the bathroom, closing your eyes, taking those deep breaths, any little thing you can carve out to take a moment, even working on those thoughts that I mentioned early on, replacing negative thoughts with more positive ones, or mantras like, you know, I can do this, we're going to get through this. Thinking about the positives, which can be hard to identify at a time like this. I want to just really emphasize that, and even that it might be time to consider reaching out for help from a professional to access support. I mentioned earlier that our mental health resources have quickly been positioned to honor physical distancing practices, and our insurance companies, many of them are working with us to make this change and to make sure these virtual visits are covered. I think going to our medical teams and any place where we receive our medical care, and I'm thinking of children's as an example, but around these financial stressors, really leveraging any access you have to, say, a social worker through your medical team or even the schools. I heard a finance expert talking recently about, you know, this is happening to everyone. I mean, this is happening in financial stressors to a very large subset of the population. And so going to, you know, mortgage lenders, the tax office, different agencies to work out things with them during this time. I mean, I've heard these recommendations made over and over. I will again highlight social workers as being such an incredible resource, and again, maybe accessing that through medical teams or schools. They really stay on top of current resources and may have some really helpful suggestions right now. I know we're also pushing things out to the SRNA to add to the website, and I know we want to do that today for a lot of the things that Anna and I have highlighted today. So hopefully some of these things provided a practical, some practical ideas to work with as we move ahead here.
Great, thank you so much. And just to end, I know we're at the end of our time. Is there a way to manage kind of being informed but not feeling overwhelmed by too much information? So kind of striking that balance between having what you need to be an informed person during this pandemic, but also not feeling completely overwhelmed by the information.
Yes, yes. I think probably all of us have been thinking about how to manage this and balance this. As you said earlier, you all are the gatekeepers. I want people to feel empowered to manage what enters their homes right now, especially in the way of news. And I think, you know, this has probably evolved and changed for different people. I have heard of many, I've taken on this practice myself, restricting the amount of time that you tune in for updates. Maybe that's a 30-minute news show, a trusted news source that you have. But I would also say, while watching, monitor yourself. Each and every time you're watching the news or taking in this stressful information, monitor your reaction to that, the reactions of your family members. Be willing to turn it off and walk away. Because, you know, depending on how you are in any given moment, the news may hit you a different way. And so just having that plan of, I'm going to allow myself X amount of time, maybe you check in the morning and the evening or whatever works for you, but also knowing if this starts to affect me in a way where I feel myself becoming significantly more anxious, I'm going to step away and tune in another time. So those are some things that I think we should all be considering right now, because it is a lot and it seems to be on 24 hours a day.
Thank you so much, both of you, Dr. Harder and Dr. Hernandez, for joining us today. We sincerely appreciate it, and all of the thoughts and advice and resources that you offered. I know this is just an intense time for everyone. No one is spared from going through something right now. So we really appreciate your time and your commitment to our community. And thank you again. And I wish you both the best as you continue to work differently now outside of clinic. And thanks again very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
having
much.
us. It was an honor to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.